The SEC announced their scheduling model for 2024. It's going to be 8 conference games. 8 conference games and 1 other Power 5 game is how they're going about it. Now, this is not like the format for the rest of time. This is what we call a stopgap. The SEC is kind of figuring this out, feeling this out, if you will, and I think it's a smart move. So we'll jump into that in just a second. But here's what we know. It is a stopgap, 8 conference games, 1 Power 5 game. They're going to release the actual schedule itself June 14th, and it'll be a big premiere, be a big event. That'll be a lot of fun to watch. They are waiting on potentially going to 9 games, but there's some money that they would need to see, it sounds like, for that to be a factor. Here's my favorite thing as a college football fan. They're protecting the rivalries. All right, so we're still going to get Auburn, Alabama. We're still going to get Georgia, Florida. Sounds like we're going to be able to still get Texas A&M. If we don't, I mean, what are we doing this whole thing for? Sounds like we're also going to try and protect those secondary rivalries. So we'll see what happens there. There's a lot that's still sort of like being hinted at, but we don't know for sure. But that's kind of the feel right now when it comes to this 8-game schedule. Now, remember, there was a lot of rumors, a lot of feeling that it would be a 9-game schedule, a 9-conference game schedule in the SEC. And Nick Saban gave you a piece of his mind with that. How much did that impact this? I don't know. But it sounds like, in general, 9 games wasn't getting the majority vote to begin with. So that's that. There's more than what meets the eye with this, though. So let's unpack that. Really quickly, though, make sure you're subscribed right here, because we talk college football every single day. You are a junkie for this sport. How do I know? Because I'm a junkie for this sport. We're talking about it every single day. You're tuned into a video about this in June. So thank you for that. We're glad to have you here. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you follow me on Twitter as well as on Instagram at JDPakel. Heck, we're also on podcast. I'll pin a comment to that below this video, but we're also on podcast wherever you get them. So with that being said, why is the SEC going to 8 games, and why are they doing it for just 1 year? Why are we doing it for just a year? Why aren't we making a move to kind of set the future for this conference with Texas and OU joining in 2024 and the playoff expanding in 2024? Well, I think Greg Byrne, the athletic director for Alabama, put it perfectly. He said this, quote, "If we're going to play more Power 5 and conference games, let's make sure we're rewarded for that. Let's make sure that we're rewarded for the strength of schedule." So what Greg Byrne is saying, listen, you want to see us play more conference games? You want to see us go play more big boys and have more entertaining games? Well, that's cool, but I don't want to be here toting 3 L's and miss the college football playoff when it gets expanded. All right? Am I going to get rewarded for playing more tough teams with the toughest conference in college football? Or is this a thing where, hey, kind of tread lightly and make sure you get as few losses as possible and be able to make the college football playoff? So I think it's a very fair point that Greg Byrne's making, and I think he's saying what everybody in the SEC is thinking. Are we being penalized for playing in the top conference in the country and playing more of those teams? And the way that I think about this is with Auburn, Georgia, LSU, Alabama, if those are 3 losses for them that they end up toting and they miss the college football playoff, and let's say those are all somewhat reasonable, respectable losses in this scenario. I'm using Auburn because of those rivalries that they have in place. You don't want to be penalized for playing good teams and losing games. It doesn't make any sense if you're an SEC member. If that's the case, then we'll go play an FCS school, and we'll kind of have some self-preservation about this thing. So the way that I look at this for the SEC, they are treating this as a tester before they get to what they're going to do for the future of the conference. The equivalent of this is like figuring out where the bottom of the pool is. Like everybody knows that deal where you walk into the pool and you figure out how deep you can go with your feet still touching. The SEC is trying to figure out how deep they can go with keeping their head above water and still making the college football playoff. So that's one piece of this. It's a chess move. They're trying to feel out what the college football playoff is going to be when it gets expanded to figure out how they should go about it in the future. Because if it's a thing where we play 9 conference games and we have more teams missing the college football playoff, it doesn't do us any good in the SEC. Is there more money to be made? Is another piece of this. Not the only thing, we'll talk about that in a second, but it's obviously a big piece of this. If you'll pay us more, then we're down to maybe play some more games, is kind of how I'm reading through this. And a lot of that has to do with the college football playoff still. Like, we're not going to hurt ourselves when it comes to the expanded playoff. But if we're able to make more money and be compensated according to that 9-game schedule, well, then we're in. At this point in time, it sounds like there's nothing in place that's guaranteed for playing more conference games and making more money. But I think if they're saying, hey, you can play more conference games, not be hurt in the playoff, and we'll play and we'll pay you more money if we're ESPN, then this conversation shifts to, okay, maybe we're up for that 9-game deal. So here's what I think is going to happen. What I think is going to happen is, if you're an SEC fan of any SEC school, you are watching very, very closely how the latter part of this playoff, the 12 through 9 seeds make the playoff, what their records are. Because if there's any 3-loss team that makes the playoff, it will be from the SEC. But that's the big question, right? Does a 3-loss team make the college football playoff? In my mind, that's what it is. Because if it's 3 losses, that's a lot more margin for error than 2 losses. And so if the SEC is saying we can play 9 conference games, still make the college football playoff with 3 losses, we might be in for this thing. Then maybe we can come to an agreement. My feeling is that for a team like an Auburn who plays Georgia, LSU, Alabama, there's a conversation around, money kind of leading the way here. Greg Sankey has a great quote. He says, money will follow, it doesn't lead. A lot of people are reading that and saying, oh yeah, sure, if that's the case, then why you expanded the playoff? That's fair. It's a true statement. To the same token, though, the money that comes with making the college football playoff in the long term, the exposure, the way that impacts enrollment, the visibility nationally, like there's a lot that comes with making the college football playoff that I think pays dividends down the road consistently, maybe more so than just that money you're getting from the TV deal. The TV deal money is huge. Don't get it twisted. That money from ESPN would be very nice if they were to compensate them for a 9-game conference schedule. But I'm telling you, making the college football playoff has a little bit more juice to it, and that's some juice that keeps on giving, in my mind. So again, what I think is going to happen, if you see a 3-loss team make the college football playoff, I would start to feel more optimistic about the SEC going to 9. If it's a 2-loss team making the college football playoff and that's the cutoff, well, then we'll see where this conversation goes and you feel a little bit less secure in that. But the SEC is going to 8 conference games in 2024. That will not be the tone that is set throughout the rest of time. It's going to take this data from 2024, reevaluate, and they'll get after it. I also should have said this. They'll be divisionless. So top 2 teams play for the title every single year. That'll be a whole lot of fun. The Hunger Games of college football. It's the SEC. Make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram at JD Piquel. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.